we'll be taking some questions after everybody presents. Sheriff Sesson.
Good evening. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks for coming out this evening. Back on March the 22nd, we had a horrific incident just a very short distance away from here. It rocked this entire community, rocked the entire county actually, and really the heart and soul of anybody who saw this coverage on the news about what happened. I guess one of our worst fears have been realized by that case and by the investigation of the case and the solving of the case is that one of the things I talked about in the very beginning, one of the biggest fears that everybody had was the fact that this literally could be an act of a random act, which appears to be the case, and that's our worst fear. The worst fear of law enforcement, certainly the worst fear of the community, that someone minding their own business in their own community, walking down the street where they have a right to be, are brutally attacked in this manner. And that's the kind of thing that just scares everybody to death. One of the questions I'm asked a lot is, well, how can we keep this from happening? Well, what guarantees do we have? Well, there are certainly no guarantees. I can't even guarantee my own family safety when they walk out the door. None of us can do that. We all just do the best that we can. And we'll talk about some tips and some ideas about what we can do to try to address some of those issues. But on the better side of that, I guess, is the fact that we now have 4 people in custody that we feel are responsible for this incident. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody in the community for all the emails. We've gotten tons of emails of thank yous and congratulations and appreciative comments, and I wanted to thank everybody for that. I did want to address one issue that came into in a couple of the emails that I guess offended a few folks by my comment of they happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. I use that as a saying that you hear quite often. It certainly wasn't intended to mean that the Bennetts had any. They contributed in any way to what happened. That was certainly not my intent. It was a random act of violence committed on someone who was where they had a right to be and where they had a right to feel safe to be. And if that upset anybody, I certainly am sorry for that. That certainly was not my intent, I can assure you. Several weeks prior to that incident, we had a mob assault that occurred in Cascades towards the end of February. And in that assault, which was a gang-on-gang assault at the community center in Cascades, where a white van pulled up, a number of subjects got out and beat up and assaulted some other subjects that were there. Later on, when this incident occurred with the Bennetts, one of the very key pieces, and something we started talking about very, very early on in this case that we felt was going to be key, was that white van. Looking back to this other incident, and really the only thing we had in the very beginning was from someone who called in and literally saw a white van and a number of subjects, and that was about the best descriptions we had and the best information we had to go on. Looking back to the other case, we felt that if we could get to a point where we could solve that case that occurred in Cascades, we'd probably be going a long ways to find who was involved in this case. As it turns out, that turned out to be the case, exactly. But the night this occurred, or the morning this occurred, we literally had no witnesses, no suspects, no motive, no reason for this to have occurred. And for many, many hours throughout the day, we didn't even know who our victims were. So I'd like to take this time, I guess, at this point to thank the commitment of the investigators and the deputies that worked this case from day one, who committed themselves to this, in some cases working as many as 53 hours in a row, following up on leads, working this case because we committed that we were going to solve this case. We were going to find the people responsible for this and give you back your community, and that's exactly what we did. And I'm very, very proud of the commitment that these folks put in. Soccer games with their kids and a lot of family events and things that they missed, working around the clock, 24/7 since this occurred to get us to this point.
Hear, hear.
Now also during this time period with this, some of the same players involved involved in this case. We had in the middle of March, or the first part of March, had a rash of burglaries down in the Middleburg area where I think total of 10 businesses that were broken into on a couple of different weekends. Some of our players, one of our players involved in that is also in custody, one of the people that was involved in this assault as well. That gentleman was actually taken into custody on April 15th at a burglary at the Loudoun guns, where they broke into there and had stolen a bunch of guns, and he was literally on his way out of the door when Leesburg police saw him and apprehended him. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, coming out the door and you run right into a cop. So that gentleman, and that was one of the best things that could have happened, is getting someone like that off the streets. And he seems to be a common denominator in a lot of these different cases that went on. But these people were literally a crime spree. They went from the eastern end of the county to the western end of the county, assaulting, robbing, burglarizing, in this case committed a murder. So there was quite a crime spree. There's still cases that we're working, not just in Loudoun County, but with other jurisdictions as well, to determine what else they might have been involved in during this time period. So even though maybe later on we can have the Commonwealth's attorney talk about the charges. 2 have been formally charged, the other 2 have not been. They're in jail on unrelated cases. So there's no real hurry to do that because they're not going anywhere. Plus it gives us an opportunity to continue our investigation, which could lead to either different or more charges, that type of thing. So this still is very much an active investigation. When we get to the point later on where we're taking questions, we have to be guarded with what we say because, first of all, it is still an investigation, ongoing investigation. We're still doing search warrants. We're still doing interviews. We're still collecting evidence, still collecting whatever statements and witnesses that may be out there. So it's still very much an active case. We still think there is the possibility there might be a 5th person that might be out there. We're not as convinced about the 6th person anymore, but we still think there may be a 5th person, but we're not 100% sure. We're still working that and trying to establish a couple people of interest, were they involved or not. So we're still working that. At this point, something else too, the arrest has been made, but we have to have a successful prosecution. That takes taking care of the evidence, not saying certain things in public that we shouldn't say because it could jeopardize the case. So I know you may get frustrated by some of the questions you want answers to. Some of them we may have answers to, some of them we may not. But some things we just can't say because we want to make sure that when court day comes, we're going to do everything we can do to make these convictions stand. And that's what the Commonwealth Attorney needs, and needs our support in doing that. So at this point, I guess what I'd like to do, we want to also shift the focus, and part of the focus of this evening is on public safety, or personal safety. A lot of the questions I've been getting, and we've been getting, are what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? What can we do to protect ourselves? What can I do to protect my family, my home, my property, those types of things? And we're going to discuss some of that. As I said a minute ago, there are no guarantees. None of us can guarantee what's going to happen when we walk out the door, or even in our own homes these days. Loudoun County is changing.